Thank you. So, anyways, welcome to the show. If you were not aware, this might be my very last show. We're not entirely sure. At least I'm not entirely sure. We'll see how busy I am next week, but I'm pretty sure we're allowed to do a show next week. I'd like to if I could, but we'll see about that. But for now, I'm going to be treating this as kind of a penultimate episode of sorts, and I'm going to talk about one of my favorite video games of all time. So, strapping, boot up, boot up gamers, put on your normal boots, just like Mario. Anyways, welcome to Experience Points, everyone. Glad to have you. Huh. Excuse me. What the hell? Oop. DJ Mix. What's happening? What? Why is that happening? I'm sorry, give me one moment. I'm sorry, I'm not sure exactly what's happening, but I'm gonna try to figure it out as best as I can, but let's try this one more time. Welcome to Experience Points. Hopefully the music plays. No, it's playing directly out of my phone. What is happening? Why does this have to happen at the very last show? Very cool. Well, how you guys doing? If you guys are in chat, feel free to say hi. While I attempt to work this out, I don't know what's going on, but, oh man. I guess I could just talk about it a little bit. Yeah. Hey, dude. Yeah, come in. What's up?
I forgot my USB stick, Jackie.
Yeah. I was about to bring it out to you, but, I'm currently live. I'm trying to figure things out. Was the DJ mix working for you?
Yeah, it was. It was.
By the way, you are live. I'm doing
live?
some sort of entertainment of some sorts. I don't know. It's just like not working.
Is it? I think it's paused.
Well, it was paused.
Can you play it?
Yeah. It's coming out of my phone instead.
Is it? You think it's? I think it's probably the dongle.
Maybe. I do have an extra dongle, actually. Hey, everyone. Sorry about the problems, but I'm going to switch the hardware we're using because it might be giving me a problem.
You know how to do it, right? Did you?
Yeah, no, I pressed stop and I pulled it out.
Perfect.
You should be good.
Yeah, I don't know. It could be the dongle because like when I did this into my thing,
Mhm.
it was perfect. Because it's wide awake. So I think it's probably the dongle maybe.
Possibly.
That's what I'm thinking.
If I turn off Bluetooth, maybe it's like trying to connect to like
Yeah, that
the
maybe.
headphones. Let's see. I guess it was the dongle. All right.
The dongle. So okay, so this dongle's wet.
Yeah, I guess so.
I'm gonna tell everybody don't do that dongle.
Yeah, could just be my phone. Who knows?
No, well
But,
they're having a they're having a problem too.
Oh, really?
With I don't know. So it could be the dongle and the mix was, so probably the dongle because it was wide awake and you didn't. Well, we'll find out later.
All right. I'm gonna start my show.
Yeah,
Thank you, though.
you're
I
good.
appreciate it.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, have a good one. Anyways, hi, I'm Jackie. Welcome to Experience Points, the show where everything goes wrong. Anyways, today I want to talk about Silent Hill, so I'm gonna do that. So, welcome to Experience Points. Welcome to Experience Points. What a turbulent start. I did want to play the entirety of this song and then just go into talking about the game, but unfortunately, I think with that turbulent start, I'd like to start a little bit sooner. Uh, I don't know if it's noticeable, but last week I had a little bit of a problem with lip smackiness and peas and puffs. I actually specifically ate a green apple today to deal with that. If you are a vocal audio person of any sort and you are frustrated about problems like that, green apples are a good way of getting rid of that. I don't exactly know why it works, but for some reason it does. Something I learned through Jeff Jacoby here at SF State in the Becca department. But yeah, anyways, I really just want to talk about Silent Hill 2, so let's do it. Silent Hill 2, a game I played back in high school. I played a certain version of Silent Hill 2, one that a lot of people would consider not good. The version I played was on a remake of Silent Hill 2 and 3. It was called the Silent Hill HD Collection. Not a great way to experience Silent Hill 2, and I've heard also Silent Hill 3. I'm not entirely familiar with 1, 3, and 4. I do know bits and bobbles about the other games, including all the other games, Downpour and ones I'm forgetting at the moment, Shattered Memories. But Silent Hill 2 in particular is the one that always really stuck out for me. And it's really strange because despite the fact that I played a very inferior remake of a beautiful game, for some reason this game still really stuck with me. And I don't really know if it was because there were so many people lauding the game as such as an amazing experience, and I just like trusted people in that way. But it wasn't until 2020 that I ended up playing the. There's a lot of things to talk about when it comes to playing a game in its original context or the original way you play it. And that's a whole argument that I'll leave to the people online to argue about. But the way I played it and the way I feel like I had the best experience with it that you can currently have with Silent Hill 2, unfortunately, was an emulated version. It is very hard to come across an original PS2 copy of it. They are very expensive, and you need the hardware as well to play the games. There's PC versions, but they are very hard to come across. It's a whole thing. But anyways, yeah, I didn't play this until 2020. I played it the Halloween of 2020, about 5 months after essentially the pandemic started. The pandemic, hard for a lot of people. And I won't say I had a worse time than a lot of other people did, but I did have quite a time. The semesters before in school, the pandemic, I had just stopped talking to a really good friend of mine for a really good reason. And after that, I met some new friends through college, and we got along pretty well. But I think because of how like life changed at that moment, and then changed once again for the worse, I really was really lonely. I found myself lonely quite often, especially when the pandemic came around, and everybody was kind of dealing with it in a lot of different ways. I headed back home with my parents, and I didn't really have any friends who still lived in my hometown. And the one that I did have that lived in my hometown was the one I wasn't talking to anymore. A lot of my friends online were very busy. And I went to kind of a tough time. And there are a few things that really stuck out to me for the pandemic, like at least the beginning. Things like Animal Crossing, the new Animal Crossing, Wayne Radio TV's playthrough series known as Half-Life VRAI. That was a big thing. In fact, of all the games that I think I really like hyper fixated on at that point, it was like Half-Life and actually Silent Hill 2. But it wasn't until October 2020 that I actually like played this game officially, I feel, for the very first time. And I kind of like just fell in love with it. There's something really about this game that really like connects to me. And actually, when I was playing it, I was kind of connecting to what I was just talking about. I was really trying my best to kind of like stream this game for my friends on similar like social media apps that we had. So Discord was the thing that we used, and I was trying to stream it for my friends. And I was actually kind of successful in getting my friends to kind of like hang out and like watch it and stuff. Kind of harkening back to like last session, I kind of talked about a little bit about like showing people things that I love, and that is a very consistent thing I love to do. And it was kind of in a time where I was very lonely. It was kind of like really like nice to be able to like play the game and like let people like watch me as I played it. But before I really like ever like got into like actually like playing Silent Hill 2 with my own hands, I think the biggest thing that really like bridges the gap for me between when I played the remake and the original game was really the music. Um, for some reason, the I don't know why I say for some reason. The music's amazing. I don't really have to say for some reason. Mm. For a very good reason, the music really like stuck to me. Um, the majority of the soundtrack from Silent Hill 2 is done by a composer and musician known as Akira Yama. I'm sorry, I'm totally fumbling over my words. Akira Yamaoka, a really great musician. He's done a lot of different things, but he's most well known for Silent Hill, in particular Silent Hill 2. Silent Hill 2 and its music has a lot of sensibilities for alternative and industrial. I guess those would be like the biggest like genres. In a way, you could really say that like ambient. I don't really know how that would be like defined as a genre, but I guess more as a mood. A lot of the music is very ambient, and I think for a lot of people, when they think about sound, the PlayStation 2 and the PlayStation 1, I think more the PlayStation 2, they really think about the sounds of Silent Hill 2. Because for some reason, the music of Silent Hill 2 is very similar to kind of the music of PlayStation 2, which really the only music and sound design there is for the PS2 is the stuff that you hear essentially in the menu, in save file areas, the infamous red, I think you have no data or you put no disc in kind of like screen that you would get that haunted a lot of children in their dreams, in their childhoods. They just have very, very similar sounds, so a lot of people really associate Silent Hill 2 and the PS2. And the PS2 is actually the very first console I owned when I was a kid. Still very like close in my heart. Although I did not play Silent Hill 2 on it, I was like 2, so I don't think that was really the game for me. But yeah, the music in Silent Hill 2, I during uh, the previous October in October 2019, I started this tradition of making like a playlist of horror media music to compile and to listen to for the entirety of October. Basically, like a playlist that I would just listen to, you know, like during the month of October. A month that I like to call Halloween instead of October, just because it's kind of funny. Uh, but yeah, I kind of made like a habit of doing that. Sometimes I break that habit, but oftentimes it's not hard for me to just like listen to nothing but that. It's actually sometimes harder for me to just go back to like listening to whatever after I've like listened to that for so long. I end up listening to it like outside of that. I actually like at some point ended up like taking a lot of those tracks, that same playlist, and like putting it into like a different playlist that was like for studying, because the music really fit for like studying and stuff. But I made that like a tradition. Along with that, another tradition I really like held that started that October was watching the show Over the Garden Wall. Since that was my first year watching it, every year after that, because I fell in love with that. Every year after that, I would watch it every October. So far, 3 Octobers in a row. Next October, hopefully, I get around to watching it. But yeah, there's really something special about the music in Silent Hill 2. Um, Although, really, like every song is amazing from the game. The industrial parts are fantastic, especially for horror as a genre. Um, I find myself listening a lot more to the alternative parts of the Silent Hill 2 soundtrack, and the ambient parts, because they're very calming. And I think there's something really special about the fact that Silent Hill 2, a game that a lot of people consider like a really terrifying game, basically starts you out with a soundtrack that is like so calming. And I feel like that's probably something that's maybe really important to horror as a genre, is not just scaring us, but also like giving us those lulls of kind of like calmness between those scares and between those like points of anticipation. Uh, because if you're kind of like going on like, I don't know, a road of being scared constantly and there not really being any lulls. I keep saying lulls, and like when I say lulls, I mean LULLS, not LOLS or Z. But anyways, like these lulls essentially like kind of like give you the peaks and valleys that kind of like make up kind of the roller coaster that is horror experiences and stuff. And I think those are really important. So what I'm gonna play for you now is a few songs from essentially what is the intro of Silent Hill 2. One of my favorite intros in like any game really. So imagine, if you haven't played Silent Hill 2, imagine for yourself a man has come to a town that he has received a letter from his wife that beckons him to go there. Uh, and it's he's looking for her, despite the fact that he knows in his mind that Maria, his wife, actually Mary, I'm sorry, Maria is a completely different person, technically. But Mary has been dead for quite a while. And so he comes to Silent Hill to figure things out, maybe perhaps find his wife who he misses very dearly. So I'm going to play some of these songs and just keep that in mind while you listen. And we'll be back shortly to talk a little bit more about this fantastic game. Stay tuned. welcome back. Um, so yeah, there was a few songs from the Silent Hill 2 soundtrack by Akira Yamaoka. Um, Very wonderful tracks. I believe the first is known as White Noise, and then that one is known as A Forest. Actually, it's just Forest. Um, but yeah, those are some of my like favorite like soundtracks in the game. They're actually, I think, the first, technically, minus the title track, the first two songs that actually play once you start playing the game. Um, I desperately need Akira Yamaoka's like sound and sample library. I really want to make music that sounds like just like Silent Hill 2, and that's something I haven't been able to find yet. I really want to be able to find that because it'd be just nice to like be able to like make music like him. I don't really know like exactly where he like found those like sounds and all the things that he uses, but they're really fantastic and really beautiful. Um, Kind of like going off topic, not really talking much about like the music at this point, but something I always thought was really like interesting. And I don't know if it stemmed from this. I think it might have because it's usually the story I think about most when I think about kind of this concept. But essentially, the concept is stories that kind of like take place in hell or purgatory. And Thank you, by the way, guest in chat. They are really nice songs. I love them a lot. I listen to them constantly. But yeah, I love stories that like take place in hell. And like I love when there's stories that you won't know at first if this like story takes place in hell or not, or if it takes place in purgatory or whatever. Um, it's still not entirely um, confirmed if necessarily like Silent Hill 2 takes place in hell. But the thing also about that is the magic about Silent Hill 2 specifically is that a lot of things are up for interpretation, and most of the game is up for interpretation actually. Uh, and That's the thing I kind of like about it so much is that like so many parts about it are kind of just so like elusive and indescribable and hard to interpret. And there's no real like one interpretation to the game, but a very consistent one is people talk about the idea that it kind of takes place in hell and all the kind of monsters that James kind of comes across are kind of like demons. Though an interesting thing I kind of like was thinking about recently, and something that was actually brought up to me by I went to uh, the LCA showcase here on campus for undergrad art majors and stuff, and I talked to somebody. We talked a little bit about Silent Hill 2. We both like really like Silent Hill 2, and she brought up the idea that I just titled it Angel Theory, but essentially the idea is that Pyramid Head, in particular, like all the characters as a whole, but Pyramid Head, um, and all the monsters are kind of more like angels, and they're actually trying to like help James in a way. Um, and I might talk about that a little bit more later. I do want to mention that there are a lot of like kind of like connections to like religion in the Bible in Silent Hill, which is really interesting. Like the use of the names Mary and Maria, song titles like Magdalene, Love Psalm, Betrayal, kind of like uh, that's like the biggest technically like sin. It's like Satan betrayed God, and that's why he became like the fallen angel. It became Satan or whatever. But and the song, these are all like song names, by the way. And then one of them is Heaven's Night, which is actually just a reference to the fact that there's a bar in the game called Heaven's Night, which is kind of like I think like a bar slash strip club. But yeah, there's also the song Ordinary Vanity, which is really a stretch, but I feel like whenever I think of vanity or people being vain, I always think of kind of like, you know, deadly sins kind of type stuff. Definitely very much of a stretch, but I don't know. It's always up for interpretation. It's kind of the point, you know. But yeah, whatchamacallit? I just like kind of like the ideas of like stories that take place in hell, or like you can interpret it as taking place in hell. Um, One of those shows that is kind of like that in a way is a show called Over the Garden Wall, which I mentioned before. I watch every like October. And it kind of has that kind of thing going on, but it's funny because I feel like I want that in stories. I see it and hope for it in so many different stories. I remember watching the entirety of Twin Peaks and just having this idea of like, oh, what if Twin Peaks is actually just like purgatory or hell, and these people are like suffering and they're just like, people are going slowly mad, and no, it's just, the first season's good, but the second season isn't anything really big or unique. It's just kind of bad. Unfortunately, there's good parts, but for the most part, it's not really worth most people's time. I've heard the third season's really great though, but yet to watch that. Something a comic I actually read recently for a class, but I don't know what my problem is, but for some reason, we were reading this comic, and essentially it's just a comic about a guy that walks around and it's just kind of slice of life. He just enjoys his day and talks to people and, different stuff. He finds like a stray dog and takes it in. But somebody else in class was mentioning it as well. They kind of thought the same thing, but I was just imagining like it being peaceful, and I'm just like imagining when it goes bad. And like in my head I was like, oh, this is like some rationalization of like, oh, this is like the bomb, this is like the future, and he's gonna be like chilling, and then the bombs are gonna drop and it's gonna be really messed up and stuff. And no, it's just a guy walking around having a good time. I don't know why I thought that was going to be a thing. But anyways, it actually kind of relates to a thing from like high school where me and my class, my English class, our English teacher showed us a poem about essentially talking about a father. Essentially, like it's very poetic. It's something to interpret in a sense. But it's essentially like, I think it's called the waltz or the drunk waltz, and it's just like a dad who's drunk dancing with his daughter, and his daughter's like feet are like standing on his feet, and he's kind of like waltzing with her, and it's supposed to be kind of like sweet, I think. But a lot of people in my class interpreted that song as essentially like a junk father who was like assaulting or like hurting, like it was like a dance was like more of like a fight, like he was beating up her. Also, I'm sorry, content warning, but like sad stuff. But yeah, no, a lot of us interpreted it as like a bad thing, like talking about like alcoholism and all that stuff, and it really wasn't. The actual like interpretation, in a sense, is just like a man who's drunk who's dancing with his daughter, and I was like really surprised by that, and that's like always like really like stuck with me for some reason. And I like to this day I think to myself like, did my teacher like do that on purpose? Like, was he trying to like make a point? Was he um like, did he think we were gonna think that, or was he like surprised by that? Like, it sticks with me to this day. I can't, like, I don't know. It's really interesting. Like, um, but yeah, it's just crazy. Anyways, besides that, I think I'm gonna play a little bit more music, and then we'll talk a little bit more about this fantastic game. Uh, but yeah, stay tuned. My name is Jackie Deaver, and you are listening currently to Experience Points. Let's listen to some music. Let's see. I am going to play you one of my favorite songs. Let's just start off a song called Promise. It's a reprise version of it, but give it a listen. It's a great song. Hope you like it. Hey everyone, welcome back. My name is Jackie, short for Jacqueline. I'm not gonna go through the whole thing again, but anyways, welcome back to Experience Points. The song you were just listening to is a song that confuses me to this day. I feel like so when I got into Silent Hill 2, I really like kind of like played the game, and then I kind of like deep dived into theories and all like different like kinds of like watching videos and reading things and kind of like listening to people's like interpretations of all the different things. And I feel like the music box from this game, it's part of a puzzle in this game. I feel like nobody ever really talks about the music box. It's probably one of the more like interesting things to me, and one of the things I really don't know like what it really like honestly like relates to in the story. But that's like kind of like the big thing about Silent Hill 2 is like it's really like everything is kind of just up for interpretation. Um, there's a lot of things that are very like kind of don't the game as a whole doesn't really just tell you exactly what it's about. It kind of just like leaves it for you to kind of figure out. Um, and it's really strange. So that song in particular is related to a puzzle, and you essentially like have to make this puzzle work. You have to like find different pieces and put them in like different places. I think like different music boxes, and each music box is like a different um, fairy tale or story, like Snow White and Rapunzel and Cinderella and all that stuff. And when you put them in the right order, the music box that you get out of that is the story of the mermaid, or in particular, My Little Mermaid. My Little Mermaid. I always call it that. The Little Mermaid. Excuse me. But yeah, it's the story about the Little Mermaid. And I found that really like poignant and interesting. Like I don't know what it means. Like I don't know how it really connects to the games. And if you know the games yourself, like I'd be interested in hearing like just like theories about that, because I feel like I never hear about that. But I think that's one of the coolest things about like Silent Hill 2 is really interpretations and stuff. And one of the things that does make me kind of sad when I hear people kind of like talk about things about the game and be very black and white about them. So the main character from Silent Hill 2, his name is James Sunderland. He is a man who is looking for his wife. I can't give you the full overhaul of exactly what happens in the game to give you your own interpretation of it, because that would be a lot, and I can't be talking about that for that long. So I'll try to kind of like go over kind of like this whole thing like very quick, because I don't have a lot of time. But I don't know. To me, James is a really interesting character, and I think he's kind of like perfect for like horror, and in particular psychological horror, because he is just so like pitiful and kind of like pathetic. But like I feel like overall you can't really help but like feel for him. Um, he at many points shows himself to be kind of like very genuinely like kind and caring. But overall, he's just flawed. And if you don't know Silent Hill 2 and you don't know the ultimate end of Silent Hill 2, I would tell you right now to cover your ears for a while, because we're going to talk about spoilers. Actually, we're probably just going to talk about spoilers for the rest of this video. It's not a video, it's a radio show. For this radio show. But yeah, if you don't want to hear about that, I'd say tune out. But so James has killed his wife, Mary. And he is dodging around the fact that he killed his wife Mary. He's trying to ignore it. He's trying to avoid it. By all means, everything he's trying, like essentially throughout the story, he's trying to come. It's like it's almost like, I guess if your interpretation is that Silent Hill 2, Silent Hill is all in his head. You could say that one part of his mind is trying to dodge it, and the other part is trying to get him to come to terms with it. If it's hell, you could say like he's trying to dodge it, and then these demons or angels or monsters are trying to make him kind of like remember, in the sense of torturing him, perhaps, or maybe trying to help him to get over it, or to repent in a way, if we're going in a very, very religious route. But yeah, like as a character, he's kind of just like a pitiful dude. And I don't know, I've just always like kind of like felt for him, because it's just like so sad. His whole story and stuff. His wife, they were like a newlywed couple, and things were great. And then his wife came down with essentially an illness that left her bedridden. And it's very sad because it kind of deals with kind of this idea of like, I think, and what I think is very integral to psychological horror is kind of like, this could happen to us, this could happen to you. And like, it kind of takes the idea of like loving somebody and that person kind of developing like an illness, and kind of like all the sadness that comes with that, but also like the sadness that comes with like the fact that like that is your life now. Your life is kind of like taking care of this person who is going to die soon. And it's very depressing. And ultimately that ends with James smothering Mary with a pillow, or at least that's what we think might be possible is what he did. There's a lot of ambiguity in the endings to the game, saying like there's different endings that you could interpret like he did it because he wanted to. There's interpretations saying that he might have done it because Mary wanted him to. There's also the interpretation saying that Mary didn't want him to, but his brain is trying to like make him think that Mary wanted him to. It's all, there's so many interpretations, but I think overall, I don't know. It's just interesting because a lot of people kind of take James as a character and kind of just turn him into he's the worst person ever and he's irredeemable. And a lot of the things he does, like they're bad. Like he did do bad, but like I think like it kind of defeats the purpose of the game is like kind of like just seeing him as like kind of like the ultimate kind of villain that is not like redeemable by any means. I think kind of like the point of the game is that you're kind of like forced to kind of feel for him in a way. And I guess maybe that is up to kind of like interpretation in a sense. I guess maybe not everybody would feel for him regardless, but I feel like a lot of people do. There's a genuine, I mean, there's a reason a lot of people like Silent Hill 2. And there's a reason a lot of people like James as a character. But yeah, it's a whole thing. There's also some stuff, and this is going to go a little bit into some more darker stuff, content warning for sexual assault type stuff. But there's a character in the game named Pyramid Head, and a lot of people's theories for a long time was there's a scene in which Pyramid Head is interacting with other monsters in the game, and kind of a scene that very much replicates to a lot of people, you know, like a scene of sexual assault. And a lot of people interpreted that as like sexual frustration within James when his wife is dying, which is a really weird theory that I think a lot of people thought was true for a really long time. And it could be, you know, I think overall things are up for interpretation always, but it's very strange. And it actually kind of brings up a good point that I think is really important. But the character creator, the monster designer for Silent Hill 2, named his name is Masahiro Ito, actually talks a lot on Twitter to fans and different people, and talks on Twitter despite even if nobody wants him to. He talks about a lot of stuff and posts a lot of interesting things. He's an interesting guy. But one of the things he actually like said on Twitter, interestingly enough, on my birthday in 2022, he talked about how he mentioned essentially like, hey, let me see how he intruded. He intended Pyramid Head to be kind of like trying to remove visions from James' mind, so like almost like fitting into kind of like the angelic thing, you know. And he also like mentions that like basically in response to saying something like Pyramid Head was a good guy all along, he said, although I tried not to depict it directly, and then he has a little smiley face emoticon, he says, and then it has like a little carrot saying the good guy, like saying, you know, he's a good guy. And honestly, a lot of this stuff could be like mistranslation. He doesn't speak a lot of English. I don't know if he even like speaks English. He might just be able to like write English, or maybe he uses a lot of translation tools. But it's interesting to hear his interpretation of the art that he made, because I think it really brings up kind of like how the difference between interpretation, author intent, and also like death of the author type stuff, but also like it brings up kind of like the idea of like, I think, and this is very particular to me as an artist, but like lack of intent. I feel like a lot of times people really like take verbatim everything they see in something, and they take every single little thing and they kind of like try to make it like symbolize things, or they try to like fit it into like, I guess, interpretations of things. Um, and I think sometimes it's not really that deep. And I know personally as an artist, like sometimes it really isn't that deep. Sometimes you just you're drawing something in particular. Like people always bring it up, but like the blue curtain thing for English class, it's a big joke people always make. Like in a poem, if it says the curtain is blue, it means that the author is saying that the person in the room is feeling blue. They're feeling sad. But really, you could, I mean, I think the thing people forget is that like people, I think these days like to interpret things a lot, but I feel like they forget that there's many interpretations to the same thing. And so I kind of brought up examples like um, like in different contexts, it could also symbolize, say, like stagnance, or it could connect an old sailor to his seaworthy days. It could remind a narrator of his wife's blue eyes. It could even symbolize, I think the best one maybe like it could symbolize like a waterfall. And I don't think a lot of people think of waterfalls as sad. A lot of those more examples were a lot more sadder. But yeah, I don't know. There is something in Silent Hill 2 that always like was really interesting to me, and I don't know if people talk about it a lot, but I think a lot. It probably is pointed out by. It sticks out a lot for me. There's a boss fight that you have later in the game that's very well done, and it's about a character who has dealt with, again, content warning for sexual assault, has dealt with abuse in that way, um, and it's a whole interesting scene where you essentially kind of like defeat this like kind of like symbolic monster that like kind of like encompasses like her dad and her brother, uh, and it's very sad. The monster design is horrific. The way it kind of interprets like the grief of and the like violence of such an act. And then after that happens and all that like very like serious heavy stuff happens, you later find that same boss as an enemy later, as just a random enemy in the game. Like just in a later part, like he's just like, there's just like two of them that are just like enemies that you fight later. And that always kind of bugged me, and I don't know if it's like, oh, you can interpret it as like that as like part of Silent Hill and James' psyche and all this stuff. I think sometimes I think they just needed a new enemy in an area, and they were like, oh, we already have a model and attack animations and code for this one enemy for this from this boss fight you just did a while ago. So why don't we just take that and put it into this part? And I think that might have been the case. I think that's something a lot of people miss a lot. But I think overall, Silent Hill, I think the things that makes it really like amazing is just like how we interpret it. Because I think also just like Silent Hill as a whole is just like a whole grounds for like interpretation and stuff. But anyways, we're nearing the end, so I'd like to talk a little bit about really quick. If you're interested in Silent Hill 2, like I am, and you want to experience it for yourself, I would always suggest playing it yourself. The best way to do so now is emulation. But if you can't really make that run and you're kind of too scared to play it yourself, I would definitely suggest a commentary less, without commentary playthrough. And then I highly suggest watching Voidburger and Bob Vid's videos on Silent Hill 2. In particular, their Let's Play Silent Hill 2 nerd commentary videos. If you type in Silent Hill 2 nerd commentary, it'll probably be like the first. I'm pretty sure it's the first thing that comes up. But after that, if you're still interested, check out the Great Debate. Spell the, and then Gray is Grate instead of, you know, the word great. Debate. So the Great Debate, check that out. It has a lot of cool info and theory and news, and one of my favorite parts, they do a lot of interviews with the people who worked on the games, which is really cool. I know they have like Guy Seehee, the guy who voiced James, and then they have Tom Hewlett, who is the dude who worked on the later games. Jeremy Blaustein, who is a voice director and translator for Silent Hill 2, as well as some of the other games. But really interesting, cool stuff. But yeah, anyways, that's the way I learned about Silent Hill 2. And that's where I'm going to end that. Uh, Before I go, I would like to say this might be very well might be the very last episode of Experience Points. I'm not entirely sure about that yet. We'll see. I might see you guys next week to talk a little bit about maybe one more thing. We'll probably just do a wrap up about all the games I've talked about and I talked about with Adrian, my good friend. But yeah, thank you guys for listening. It's been a really crazy 2 years. Started back in 2020, the very beginning, right before the pandemic, and then once it hit, we went online, me and Adrian, doing this radio show as a podcast instead. But it was a great experience. It was really nice to be able to meet Adrian. He's a great friend, and it really brought a lot of opportunities kind of like around. I also just learned how to be a radio personality, which was really kind of neat. But yeah, as well as that, like me and Adrian and a few other people, including a cool person named Nav, have done. We've been doing a podcast called 10 in the Chamber. It's about it's essentially like a retrospective based on Trigger's like library of animation work. So I would highly suggest checking that out. Anyways, thanks for listening, everyone. And one thing I will add really quick. I just made a Twitter that you can follow. Whenever I upload these recordings of this show, I will post a link to them on the Twitter. If you want to follow that, it is at EXP, all capitals. Capitals, case, it's not case sensitive, but it's EXPoints, POINTS, podcast, PODCAST. Anyways, thank you all for listening, and I hope you all have a good rest of your week. We'll play you out to some music, and hope you have a good one, everyone. Goodbye. Embrace the chaos.